an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering of Shadow and Sea, The Elder Empire, Book 1, Chapter 4, and 5, and 6. I should say Elder Empire Shadow, Book 1. In these chapters, we get a little bit more of the lore of this universe, but we don't get an explanation of the lore. And it's just got me sort of excited about what we're going to find out about how this all works, because we've got a mission, but I don't understand the stakes of the mission, because I don't really know what's happening yet. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to George for commissioning this episode. And George also gave me a spreadsheet on what chapters to cover at what times for which episodes. So actually, George, with your permission, I'll share that. I've made for those who are interested in this, I am going to open up the Unspoiled Discord to everyone. I have patrons-only Facebook groups, and I will have a patrons-only channel on Discord. But I have kind of had it with Facebook. I've been having it with Facebook. And the Discord has a lot of potential, and it's just been hard for me to... it's difficult to learn new things. So I resisted Discord because it's, a totally different way of communicating in some ways. But the nice thing is you can have all the channels, and I can create a spoiler channel for the Elder Empire series, which I have already done. And I can make a no spoilers channel. And I'll post I'll make a no spoilers channel, and I'll post or George, if you want to join the Discord, you can post the link to the spreadsheet for what I'll cover for which episodes. And that way, people can see and y'all can talk about it. There's also a spoiler chat in there for Cradle. And I've made one for pretty much everything that I'm covering for Spoil Me. I did that today, and I'm going to continue to work on the Discord altogether, because I feel like that's a really good localized place that I, like I said, have not been implementing since I basically established it several years ago. But George says, I'll get a Discord. As a fellow old, I have been hesitant to make one. Same. And now I'm really understanding it better, and they've created threads as an option, which was part of the difficulty for me. And I'm learning the benefits of it a little bit more. But those of you who are, above the age of 30, it can get a little bit overwhelming to learn new things. It's the same with TikTok. I recognize the value. I love absorbing content on TikTok, but trying to create TikTok content, I feel so baffled sometimes. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that, and I'm going to try and remember to link the Discord in all of the posts I make from here on out, and that way we'll attract some people for generalized conversation, because otherwise, spoiler chats on Facebook, you have to be added, which means that you have to find a person who's in it already. It's a headache. So anyway, just wanted to put that out there. And I probably should make that announcement at the beginning of the other shows that I'm doing, One Piece and whatnot as well. Anyway, okay. That out of the way. So these 3 chapters are jam-packed with information. Feels like too revelatory a word. They're packed with teasers, is really what I want to say. This is the Abaddon taken to a full book plot level for me. And what I mean is, in Cradle, the Abaddon were sort of inscrutable, and the storyline for it was a bit impenetrable until I got further on into the series. Going back and re-listening to those books or rereading them, the Abaddon storyline falls into place, and I can see how beautifully set up things were from the beginning. But when I went into it, I didn't know any of that information, and so it was difficult to keep track of everything. I'm feeling that a little bit at this point with this book, and the one drawback of it in this book is that there isn't a separate plot line that's sort of divided from all of this information that can be easier to follow, so that I can sort of section off what I don't know the way that I could with the Abaddon storyline, which I sort of focused on what was happening with Lyndon and the Abaddon. I was pretty much treating it like, okay, well, I'm sure I'll figure it out later. I will be told what this means later. I'm not able to do that with this book because all of the stuff that I'm being teased about is in the main plot. That said, I can still follow the plot. It's just a little distracting at this point, 6 chapters in, to feel like I still don't really know a lot of what's happening. And I think that if we don't start to get like more of our feet on the ground in respect to some of the names that he's thrown around, and by names, I mean all kinds of stuff. We've got names of like beings, we've got names of places, we've got names of objects, we've got names of like types of procedures on objects, and no real information about what any of it is. I have a great deal of patience for slow reveals of info, but you need to give me something more before you can continue on to the next thing without explaining it. And I don't feel like this is done that well in the opening of this. I feel like he could have given us a little bit more, slowed down on some things, and explained at least one or two. And as it is, I'm going along thinking I know in general where we're headed with certain, like, the implications of some things, but I don't know for sure, and that causes a bit of like a tickling distraction in my brain while I'm reading, which keeps me from being super focused, and that's a shame. So I don't actually know, George, if you have this information, but the publication date of this book in comparison to not just Cradle, but all of his other books, George actually says this in the chat. Thank you, George, for anticipating my question. George says, yeah, I feel like in comparison, you can really see that Will learned his lesson from this and better executed in Cradle. Thank you, George. Okay, so Cradle came later. I feel like that makes a lot of sense. And I don't know if, like, he was planning to focus more on the Abaddon in Cradle and he decided to cut it up. Like, you know, maybe he changed the delivery system of the information. I'm sort of wondering if, when I go and read the other book, which is of Sea and Shadow, I wonder if I'm going to feel that he should have just intercut chapters from each with the other, or if it will really feel rewarding that they are two totally separate but like sort of parallel books. I have no idea what to expect with the other, of course, either. I don't know if it's told from the perspective of a character that we've met already, or if it's somebody that we sort of saw as like a side character that was nameless, or if it's going to be, you know, like, for all I know, it could be from Carrion's perspective and be somebody that we have gotten to know fairly well a little bit. But anyway, just the fact that this was before Cradle, that gives me some insight into like what he was experimenting with a little bit here. And like I said, I'm not off board here. I'm still interested. I just feel that he is going a little too hard with all of the sort of name dropping, I guess is the way I want to say it, without explaining any of it. And he could stand to do a bit of a step back. He tries to do that, I think, with the italicized excerpts at the head of each chapter. I think that's his attempt to give us some info, some exposition, but it's just not enough when the world, the universe that he has created is as dense with unfamiliarity as it is. It's just not quite enough. Maybe if he had made the chapters shorter and then done this ahead of each one, that would be a little bit more effective. But the chapters are, you know, they're pretty packed. So it's a long time before you get another snippet of this information. George asks, I don't know if it's a real spoiler, but do you want to know? Oh, what the other book is? No, don't tell me, George. I want to be surprised. Don't tell me. Probably I will like begin to figure it out, but I do just want to see if I can figure it out. So the opening for chapter 4 is about chimera, is how I'm saying it, which in reading it doesn't sound that way, but when I say it sounds like chimera, which is sort of a, what do you call it? Like, what I think of are the Avatar, The Last Airbender style combo animals, things that are created as like with different parts of different animals. And I sort of imagine these as a similar concept as sacred beasts in the Cradle universe, because they take the shape of animals, but they have a sort of magical quality to them. And that quality can be used to make things or can be funneled into tools. It's unclear to me exactly how that works, but, I'm seeing some parallels here with that and like soul smithing and the way that a binding is used. But it seems like the animals themselves are used somehow here. So what it says here, they take the shape of animals and they can control the world around them. Chimera of the sea, like wave riders or deep striders, possess the innate ability to command the motion of water in specific ways. Chimera of the sky, especially those in the shape of birds or winged serpents, manipulate air or gravity. Chimera of the forests can sometimes manipulate trees or lesser beasts. If this is a function of intent, such as we humans possess, then the implications are troubling. What separates men from chimera if not our intent? What does that imply about soulbound and their vessels? And soulbound and vessels are both capitalized. I don't remember if I mentioned coming across a thing with the word soulbound and vessel in the last chapters, but somebody was described as reaching for an object as if they were soulbound and it was their vessel being taken away. Which I'm sort of imagining it's like a Horcrux and you've got like a piece of yourself in it. And if it is taken or destroyed, it's a fucking problem for you. But again, don't know yet because we haven't been given that information as of yet. Also, I think it's interesting that they are troubled by this because of the fact that it seems as if maybe these creatures are as conscious as men are, and that bothers them. Which, I would be more interested in the fact that we have intent also, and we aren't able to do that. So, is that the beginnings of the concepts of sacred artists, So, then we have the present day, and a bit of the description of what happened with the emperor. And he was murdered 5 years ago. I don't know if we're going to find out that Shera murdered the emperor herself, because we find out that she was in his employ. And, when they said like her relationship with the emperor, at first I thought it was sort of a tongue-in-cheek, like, oh, you killed him. But then in the dialogue, it's suggested that he teaches her things himself. He gives her advice. He had a face-to-face cordial relationship with her for some reason. And we still don't know what that was or what happened. It is mentioned by, I can't remember her name, Yala, I think, that she killed some of her own people, like folks that were on her own side, which is enough to make her seem like a traitor, and like maybe she could be executed for that. And the only reason that she isn't is because I don't know if it's just that Carrion was on her side, if the circumstances seemed justified enough to, like, sort of undermine the confidence Yala might have had in killing her, if there was, like, sort of public opinion was on her side and she knew it wouldn't look good, or do people not know what happened and they're just not able to, exact their punishment because it's being kept quiet how things shook out? There's all kinds of reasons why she could still be alive, even though Yala clearly wouldn't mind if she wasn't. Or maybe it's just that she's that valuable as an assassin that it wasn't worth killing her because of, all of the use she could still be put to. So we get a description of how, like, after the emperor is killed, the, like, capital descends into absolute chaos. And it's sort of interesting that, like, further out, away from the capital, this isn't actually affecting anybody. It's a really nice sort of acknowledgement of how little a lot of this stuff affects the average person. The small folk don't care who sits the Iron Throne. They care about, having healthy children and a plentiful harvest and a fire in their, they don't give a shit who's ruling as long as they can eat and live in peace. And that feels right to me. The Imperial Guard and the troops had worked together to restore order. They had even hired the Consultants Guild to help, though Shera had been otherwise occupied for most of that operation, which I'm assuming is her training. The crime rate had quadrupled overnight to the point of pitched battle against Imperial Guards. So-called street gangs... Oh, no, that's not her training. That is when she gets picked up by what's-his-face. My bad. I'm getting my timelines confused here. That's when she gets picked up by Maxwell. Was that his name? But yeah, everything just goes fucking bonkers. And it says that Shera didn't mind. The increase in crime had been an increase in her contracts, at least for the first few years. But she wasn't picked up by him then. Because the Emperor's still alive when she's a kid, right? Because then, or is it a different Emperor? It's the same Emperor, I'm assuming. So she's working for that Emperor. Then he gets murdered by persons unknown at this point. And her contracts go up because they get involved. And she's working for them by now. So, otherwise employed when most of that goes down, I was thinking she was still in training, but she was working for him, so I'm assuming she was way out of training, and there was something else happening, which is interesting. I am extremely curious what that is. Okay, now I got to straighten down my brain. Sorry. So, this is the point where we rejoin her in taking back this workshop that she got hired to get back for its owner at the close of the previous section. And I love the fact that she is making the same threat to each guy. I took her specificity in the last chapters of which window she was going to break into as proof that she had done recon on all these guys. But as it turns out, Zen, who we later meet, taught her specific details were the cornerstone of any threat. Lack of accurate information was no excuse for a lack of specificity, which is actually amazing. That's the kind of thing where if somebody says some shit, and I think he says later, the less you actually know, the more confident you should sound when you talk about it. And I will tell you what, guys, this was something that I was taught by a supervisor when I was working at Whole Foods, and I was working in the grocery section. And so just before anybody says anything, it wasn't like I was working in the section that sold like supplements or alleged medicine and I was lying to people. It was just about like food. But people would ask like, what's your favorite brand or which would you recommend? And I learned very quickly from the supervisor that acting as if you aren't sure, telling people, I don't know, I haven't tried any, that's not what they want. People want to feel like you have complete command over all information. Whether it's true or not is utterly irrelevant, because what are they going to do? You know, you said you liked X brand better. They bought it. They didn't like it. Are they going to come back to the store and be like, you told me this was good and it wasn't? That shit's subjective. You can't do anything about it. But in the moment, just being like, oh, I definitely prefer this brand. That's the one that I always use. And I've tried the others. And you just say some shit and people feel so comforted by that. And it not only does that translate to apparently good customer service. And I say apparently because, like, is it? Not really, but it makes them feel like it is. But also, as a team member, most importantly, it gets them out of your face much quicker. If you vacillate and you're like, I don't know, I never try, then they want to keep talking to you. Then they want to compare ingredients. Then they want to, the best way is to just be like, this is the one I use. I've tried that one. It wasn't really as good. The texture was weird. I choose this one. And that's it. And it's over in like 5 seconds. And that was one of the most important lessons in terms of like salesmanship that I learned. It's interesting that it works with something like this, threats, because I wonder if you were like, for example, in a fight and somebody said something to you that you knew wasn't actually true. Like they said, well, I'm going to sneak in your back door, the one with the handle that's broken, and you don't have a back door at all, or your back door's handle isn't broken. Would it still creep you out? I think it probably would anyway, right? Like, it doesn't matter. She's banking on the fact that most people's houses have broken windows. Most people's windows creak or, make noise. And that's general enough that she trusts it's going to work. But I have to wonder, even if it flat out was like incorrect, would it still be as effective? And I think so. So we have this moment here. First of all, she almost gets shot by a guy because she's being cautious and not just killing everybody, which would be a lot easier. And the fact that she's being cautious almost gets her shot, which really fucking does a number on her temper. And she winds up taking the gun away from this guy and shooting him. He is the only one who dies. And later on, her friend, what is her name? Ayala? Can't remember. But she says that, Ayana, thank you, George. She's surprised at the fact that Shera only killed one person. She really thought the speed with which Shera got inside meant that she had just slaughtered everybody. The one person that she comes across that she really isn't sure how to handle is this dude who seems to have been going and fetching ingredients to make dinner. And he's like in this larder. And I just hate the word larder so much. Just an aside, like why? But she can tell herself that he probably is just a servant and had nothing to do with any of this. But she doesn't know that. And she's realizing that, like, as much as you want to weigh somebody's guilt, without full information, there's really no point to it, because you can tell a story in either direction. And this is when she thinks about Lucan and how Lucan is a proponent, and we don't know who this is until later, but Lucan is somebody who believes that everybody's lives are as valuable as anybody else's. And yet, the speculation aspect is what she kind of has more of a problem with. It's not as cut and dried. It says, it was all well and good for him to investigate the guilt and innocence of his targets. He was a reader. He could probably touch this guy's apron and tell what the man had eaten for breakfast 3 days ago. Shera had no such power. And as a general rule, she felt no pity. It would make her night easier if she killed him and moved on. But the Emperor himself had once given her a piece of advice. It was out of character for him, which was why she'd paid attention. I need you in a team, because no one's judgment is correct all of the time. Not even mine. We all need other eyes to see where we are blind. Absolutely true. Once you begin, it's one thing to let yourself have the final say, but it's another thing to not be willing to listen to other people's perspectives at all. And, sometimes you just aren't going to agree with the suggestions of others, but nevertheless, it's always helpful to hear how they're feeling about a thing. And she winds up thinking about Mari and how Mari would have wanted to leave this guy alive, but Maxwell would have told her that she'd already wasted time she could have spent killing him, which is what kind of sends her in the direction of sparing this guy's life, because it's either the advice of Lucan or the advice of Maxwell. And obviously she's not going to fucking listen to Maxwell. And that's a really interesting, mental process that I think a lot of us can probably relate to. When you're making hard decisions, you have a couple points, and then you start to think about which of your friends would suggest which thing, and which of those friends tends to be making better life decisions most of the time than the others. And that really can help shorten the process. You know, I have a friend who recently just texted me and was like, okay, I already talked to my incredibly petty, angry friend about what to do here, but you're my level-headed friend, so here's me asking for your advice. Everybody plays the roles in your life, and you have to just know what those are and decide how important that opinion should be to you. So, this is when she uses the needle on this guy. Or no, isn't she out of needles, I think? I'm trying to remember, because she takes an apple from him. And, that's right, Ayana appears here. She's talking and says something like, I don't know why we even wear these, like, disguises, quote unquote. And Ayana just shows up, so it's like she knew she was there the entire time. Yeah, she lets this guy run off. That's right, because she's out of him. So she gets a note from Yala here that is delivered by Ayana. We found a garden that requires your shears. Head northeast, where a bricklayer will give you a fish. Have no fear, a shepherd watches your flock. So the fish, as it turns out, is basically the equivalent of like a water horse. And it sucks. We'll get there, but man, he was very good at depicting how fucking uncomfortable this ride is. It sounds like the worst. So we have here it is. Yala had a mission for her and she was looking forward to it. Ulrich Fletcher returned to his workshop the next day, shortly after dawn. Hope and disbelief warred in his heart. Surely one night hadn't been enough time for the consultants to do their work. Ulrich, to remind you, is the guy who hired her. I love this so much. So he comes in, and this motherfucker is expecting the place to just basically be like empty of bad guys. Maybe. That's the best he's hoping for. And he walks in, and that shit is like... It's basically been staged like the fucking, like an Airbnb that somebody's about to take photos of. It is spotless. Everything is organized. Even a like fresh suit of clothes is in a closet and pressed and ready for him. His office everything has been like put in place, and all of his notes and notices that he's received are stacked in order of urgency. Everything is taken care of to a degree that hadn't even entered his wildest dreams, never mind been an expectation. And I really love this above and beyond customer service, which is really what it is. That shit is what people remember. Like, you know, getting your shit back, that's what you paid for. That's all well and good. But they went and like put your life in order for you. Can you imagine a service like that would do this for you? It's like having maids, but maids who are also assistants and know your shit and what's important and not. And they even give him a chain with a padlock and key that are invested with this securing ability. Use them to secure your doors, and trash should no longer blow in your door so easily. Please enjoy. Compliments of our guild. I love this. And the back of the card just has a picture of gardening shears, the symbol of the Gardners. I should mention, too, the whole thing with the Gardners, the Masons, the Shepherds, the Readers. I really do enjoy extremely dangerous skill sets being titled with something that seems extremely innocuous. I understand the urge to name assassins something that sounds incredibly badass, you know, like shadow knives, something, you know, like I get it. But calling them gardeners is so much more intimidating, because that means they don't need a scary name. They don't need it. That's not, like, their reputation is the scary part. Their abilities are the scary part. Their name, it doesn't matter. And that, for me, is a big dick energy. You know, that's much more intimidating. So we have Shera getting her fish and riding to this island where once she finally gets there, she falls asleep despite her better judgment. And finally makes it to the council room at midnight. There's like, she has to take another fish, I think, right? Yeah. This dude who tells her that she has to do that again. Yeah, the second Mason dismounted, smiling, telling her that this Chimera would take her straight to the Grey Island. He would wait for a ship to pick him up, but she was meant to meet with the High Council of Architects with all speed. So, she heads out and winds up in the room, which is underground, with only Carrion and Yala. I expected there to be a lot more people here, but no. And it's constantly an issue here, the way that Yala is behaving about the mission that she shares, that they are arguing about whether they should send Shera in by herself. So here it is. A single gardener assignment could make that operation much safer. Harvest the target, prune any witnesses. They only have one suitable candidate. If he's dead, they're back to the beginning. And let's see. We have a fairly important client making a specific request. It's directly relevant to your personal history, so we had you brought in, which means that it could only be related to the Emperor in some way. She was hoping that would never be a thing that she needed to worry about being brought up again, but she was wrong. And we find out later that it is because they're hoping to make somebody a new emperor. Evidently, there's no emperor right now. I don't know what that means about their system of government. If there's anybody like a prime minister, a president, a king. It hasn't been mentioned. I have to assume there's like a cabinet, a council, somebody, and no actual figurehead. Which I assume, now that we're sort of learning about what is motivating these people to put a new emperor up on a throne, I have to assume that becoming an emperor is dependent on this heart thing that we will get to presently. So, the heart of Nakathi. I'm going to say Nakathi. I like that. An image swarmed Shera's mind, a gray heart with veins of green still pumping sludge. An island made from the corpse of a great elder, ribs standing high like towers, guarded by the living dead. In the distance, Shera thought she heard a woman's crazed laughter. I'm sorry, what now? All that sounds fucking bananas. Like, what? Shera just tries to be like, the heart was destroyed. And Yala's like, the dead mother once had many hearts. And I'm like, what? The dead mother, and she had how many hearts? We don't even know. She just says many. You may remember that others have searched for them in the past. Shera remembered cutting through members of a crazed cult. She remembered the Emperor putting their leader to sleep so he couldn't defend himself as he was torn apart by creatures of living death. She tried to think about that night as little as possible. What? Again, I ask you. Excuse me? So, there's this group called the Black Watch Guild, who apparently has laid hands on another heart. And they can bond with this, which makes them evidently very formidable. She says, we will be raiding the Black Watch with all the force we can muster in 10 days. Kill the Watchman if we must, and take the heart if we can. To destroy it, Carrion added pointedly, looking at Yala. I have to assume that's definitely not what Yala wants to do. She says Yala's mouth tightened, but she nodded. Yes, to destroy it. Everybody has to keep saying to destroy it, right? To Yala. As, like, just in the next couple chapters, it comes up like 2-3 more times where Yala keeps saying, retrieve the heart. We need to get the heart. She never says herself, we have to destroy it. She wants it for something. I have to assume that the client actually told her that they want it, and she is acting like this is a destroy mission when in fact it's a retrieval mission, and that's not really allowed. And so she's like either doing something on the sly because of money, or she's taking it for herself, or I don't know. She's maybe being paid by somebody else. Maybe she's a bad guy. No idea, but it's really clear that what she wants does not align with what she's telling them the mission is. So, there's a whole thing about how there is a facility that they have to bring the heart to in order to destroy it. Like, it's a big deal. It sounds like a fucking nuclear device, practically, you know? Carrion wanted someone killed now, while Yala thought they should ignore the potential target until the guild's main operation began. So Shera asks, who do we need to kill? And it turns out that Nibirius Claiborne is the person that they think is a candidate to bond with this thing. A chronicler for the witnesses. He was assigned to the Imperial Palace for the same years you were. I thought you might know him. And what I found really interesting, I keep being compelled by Shera's character. She, like, vaguely remembers this guy and vaguely remembers another dude who is mentioned later, but they really fail to make much of an impression on her. And I have to assume it's just because she is such a focused and practical person that someone who isn't directly involved in her life, like a particular friend, just doesn't capture her interest enough for her to remember them. It sort of reminds me a little bit, to be honest, of Luffy from One Piece, where he has this very, like, sort of ADD quality to him, where everything that isn't directly in front of his face it doesn't exist. And if it is directly in front of his face, for the moment, that is literally all that matters to him. And then once it's gone again, he's just like, what? Oh, I don't remember that. You know, like, that was sort of the vibe I got from how little either of these people made an impression on her. I could be totally wrong, and it might be that the, Imperial Palace is full of people. It might be thousands to keep track of, and these were just a couple of unfamiliar faces in a sea of unfamiliar faces. But I don't know. I just get the impression that Shera is not really concerned with the people around her beyond whether they're a threat. And that's kind of it, I don't know. So they want him to bond with it. If he managed to take the heart as his soul-bound vessel, then Nibirius would become a soul-bound. He would be able to call on Nakathi's power himself. There was only one reason why the Black Watch would allow that. They want to name him the next emperor, Shera muttered. Her head spun. This discussion was progressing far too quickly. She very much wanted a chair. I love that she looks up and realizes that Carrion has a chair, even though there aren't any others. And then it's like, oh yeah, she's always prepared. Very Linden energy. So Carrion is like, yeah, it would be great if you were pruned, because then that would really set them back. But Yala is like, if we succeed in our attack on Blackwatch, then we will have control of the heart, and he's not even going to matter anymore. And again, we will have control of the heart. That's not like we will destroy the heart and whatever he's up to doesn't matter. We'll have control of it. And she tries to claim that there aren't enough resources to dedicate to both killing this guy and taking the heart. I call bullshit. It seems like Shera is also not really buying this, but then she finds out that there is, first of all, 2 soulbound on the ship as well, and a champion, which were basically sort of given through, like, commentary to understand that a champion is essentially like a gladiator. This is somebody who fucking has amazing hand-to-hand combat. Shera is unusually good at hand-to-hand combat for a Gardner, but Gardners specifically are meant to be assassins. They are not meant to be warriors. So, she has absolutely no doubt that were she to go up against a champion, she will die. She is not confident in her abilities on that, and she doesn't have any illusions about it. She has been told if there's a soulbound that she has to fight, she better bring her all, and if there's a champion, she better run, is essentially the hierarchy there. So, let's see. The name of the man who owns the ship this is taking place on is Calder Martin. 26 years old, former Black Watch, once indicted for the destruction of an entire Imperial prison. His father was executed for the theft of Imperial artifacts, and his mother is a commander in the Black Watch Guild. He's another old friend of yours, though I doubt you'd remember. Shera didn't, but flipped idly through the file. So, yeah, this is when she finds out about the champion, Orzaya Woodsman. I hope I'm saying that right. It's a pretty badass name. And when he's described later, I kept picturing like a young Liam Neeson. Not even young, but like younger Liam Neeson. I think it's the broken nose description that got me. So, she goes and sleeps, and then we go to chapter 5, 15 years ago. I really have to speed it up because I'm so behind. Okay, so, she's having trouble sleeping 15 years ago because she is so used to noise from the city, and this quiet makes her really nervous because every sound in the quiet sounds threatening, which I thought made a lot of sense. Carrion comes to collect her and can sense that she didn't really sleep. She asks where the chamber pot is, and when Carrion tells her that we have indoor plumbing, she doesn't even know what that is. And they are heading in across the island to this really cool area where on the way she's sort of asking Carrion, what's the deal with you guys like being so secretive about everything? They wouldn't like people be really impressed seeing the drills that you're carrying out and like how badass you all are? And Carrion's like, yeah, see, if they saw us drilling, they would know what our abilities are. The best way to be impressive is for people to not really be able to size you up. And the greater the mystery, the greater our imagined powers. We are strongest when we are unknown. And again, let's see. It's my responsibility to warn you. It can be difficult to find the doors. All she could see beyond the grass was gray. Shera started searching in the tall grass. Is this one of those hidden doors? She asked. Yes, Carrion said, and walked up to press her hand against the wall of mist. So, it's the House of Masons, my bad. And there's a fat man in an apron waiting for them when they come inside. And he asks, young lady, is that any way for an alchemist to dress? Did you finish rendering that compound I asked for? Stormwing Ichor doesn't come cheap. I love this, you guys. What he's doing here is basically training her to be good at improv. Which, like, this is one of those skills that I feel is so undervalued in life. If you're somebody who worked in customer service and you were good at it, this is a thing that I think you will understand. It's part of small talk, honestly. People throw weird shit at you sometimes. And I don't mean that literally, although that too. I mean, they will just say shit that comes out of left field and you have to roll with it and act like it's normal. Or you have to roll with it and not like let the horror show on your face, or pretend to be amused even though it wasn't funny. There's all kinds of things you got to do. And him just asking shit that she couldn't hope to know the answer to, and just flinging this kind of thing at her repeatedly. I really, really enjoy it. It's fun to watch her begin to develop her skills on this front, especially considering she isn't going to be a Mason, And we know her personality is like not one that lends itself to dealing well with people particularly. She just winds up being better at it than Ayana, which is why she's like the customer face. But that's not saying all that much. Like, Ayana probably wouldn't be bad at it if she didn't have a crazy voice and appearance. So anyway, he says, what's the average annual rainfall of the Dillian Basin? How am I supposed to know? Go ask a green warden. Zen considered a moment, idly juggling the other knife he'd pulled from the ceiling. 6 out of 10, he said. The outrage was enough for a young lady. You redirected the burden of the conversation back onto me, and you were specific enough to direct me to a green warden. We can do better, though. Oh, yes, we can. So, to jump ahead a little bit, they walk through an area where there's tons of clothing. And she begins to realize that these are all like various disguises. They're all labeled with the age range somebody wearing this would be, what their weight would be like, what kind of impression they would give with this outfit, what region it is specific to. This is all very, very much my jam. It also sort of reminds me of the life and lies of Locke Lamora. I don't know if you guys have read that, but this has a similar feeling in some ways to that. So Zen makes food for the both of them. And Carrion is, because he's trying to be like, if you can't pose as a Heartlander, I'll, blah, blah, blah. And he's like talking about preparing her. And this is when Carrion says, I don't need another Mason. I need her briefed and ready for the garden. And Zen's like, okay. Wow, well, let's see how this goes. And she mentions like what she knows about a consultant when he questions her, that people ask questions and if you can pay enough, you answer them. And he's like, oh, that's a really good way of saying it, actually, because a lot of kids sort of forget the fact that we charge. And the client is emperor slogan gets brought up here. And it turns out the first one, which is the clients are treated as if they are the emperor, is only half of it. The other one is that in the end, the emperor is your client at all times. Keep in mind that you don't do anything that goes against the empire as a whole, which is very interesting, especially considering allegedly there's no emperor right now. Unless there is, and they're just planning on replacing him with this guy. I don't know. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe she killed an emperor. There's a new emperor already, but they're just wanting to replace that one with the one that they're going to put in. Maybe. So, let's see. Yeah. Here we go to this, we are the, oh, right. George says, this is the past when she was a kid, so he was alive then. Thank you. Forgot about that, George. And here we get Carrion quoting Foundation of Night, written by an ancient architect. We are the architects who designed the empire and the masons who laid its foundation. We were born before the rule of man, and we will shepherd its people until the end. We are the counselors in the dark, the hand in the shadows, the gardeners among the weeds. It is through us that the empire continues to prosper. So this is when they go into this other room, and there is a guy there that is tied up and apparently being tortured. And she immediately asks why he's being punished. She can sense what the fuck is happening in here right off the bat. And Zen says that he was caught in the act of giving out sensitive information. And Shera fucking goes to just immediately stab this guy. She considers this to be a test of whether or not she's willing to do what needs doing. And she is determined to earn her fucking meals. So she goes to fucking kill him. And this dude stops her for a second, but still winds up getting stabbed. She makes a second attempt and very nearly lands it before Zen has to step forward and grab her and pull her off the guy. And it turns out that this dude is an actor and he's a Mason, I'm assuming, And he was not being questioned. This was all just a test to see how she reacted to all of this. And I love this moment. Shera had forgotten to think like Carrion, and now Carrion had tricked her. Zen had fed her breakfast, but now they worked together to play her like a whistle. Was this whole thing just a joke? Slowly and with evident pain, Zen lowered himself to his knees. He looked deep into her eyes, searching for something. She glared back, embarrassed and betrayed. He was your friend. Why did you make me stab him? Zen reached out both hands, gently taking her knife from her. He rubbed the blade along his apron, leaving smears of red behind. There is something missing in you, even compared to the rest of us. You have been shattered, melted down, and reforged into a lost and broken image of the one who made you. He stared at her a little longer, then turned to Carrion. 10 out of 10. You have my signature. Let us take her to the garden. So, the fact that she's missing something, maybe is a psychopath. Like, it's tough to say. It feels like that a little bit, but not entirely. High-functioning sociopath is a benefit, that is a plus for them. So, the next chapter, and I really do have to move along, starts with a description of how readers use intent slightly differently. Readers are better at crafting tools, investigating crimes, creating weapons, enacting subtle sabotage, and manipulating the information received by other readers. Yet for some reason, none of our highest trained operatives are readers. We should remedy this lack immediately. Confidential correspondence, presumably related to the founding of the Gardners, excerpt stored in the Consultants Guild archives. So, now we are in present day. And Shera goes to visit a prisoner at the heart of the island. They don't have many prisoners here. And the Mason, who is in charge, named Hansen, is not pleased to see her. Like, she's really not supposed to be here this way. She's supposed to make an appointment. And she sort of has to threaten the guy because she was able to, render him unconscious once before. And she's essentially like, I could do that again if you'd rather. So it turns out that the guy that she's seeing is Lucan, who is the one who says that everybody's life is valuable, the one that's been trying to teach her a little bit of empathy. And we find out a bit later that he just knows too much information to be allowed amongst regular people, but it's not necessary to keep him this under security. So she makes a bargain later that if she goes ahead and tries to handle this thing on her own, this mission, that he be allowed out onto the island at large. He won't be, released out into society, but he won't be kept in this little tiny prison. And he is her love interest, basically. There's definitely, they kiss, and they have this, there's a sort of joke with him about how she has such a hard time sharing her feelings with him, like the fact that she even likes him. She sort of tries to keep it under wraps as much as possible. I really do like the chemistry between the two of them. And the fact that she is unsure how to handle, whether she should kiss him right away, whether they should talk first, which means to me that this is sort of new for the two of them. I don't know how new, but she hasn't got the certainty in herself, I just really hope that he is genuine and not fucking around with her heart, because she doesn't need that. She's already so closed off emotionally. That will ruin her, I hope to God. So she has offered to break him out, and he won't go. It turns out at one point, she asks him, why did you have so much stuff? Because there's, things in his cell that he didn't have before. And he says that, I finally convinced them I wasn't going anywhere. How did you do that? When he came to inspect the cell, I disarmed him, tied him up, left the cell, locked it with his own keys, then walked back in, untied him, and gave him his keys back. Since then, he just sticks his hand in every week or so to make sure I'm not brewing a curse or a bomb. So, yeah, this, like, relationship that they have together, it's really tough because she wants him to bust up out of there. And he is refusing to do that, which I'm sure for her feels like he's refusing to be with her, you know. But it's, I'm interested in what he knows and what exactly they're so afraid of. Also, this is when she tells him about the mission. She does not tell him about there being a champion on board. He does see that there are soulbound people, and that's enough to really freak him out and start to make him say, you shouldn't do this by yourself. And then eventually he notices that there is an elder strapped to the bow of the ship, or the hull of the ship. And that, for him, is just like completely over the edge. Just, you really should not do this. You're throwing your life away. This is insanity. If Yala allows you to do this, it's only because she hopes you'll die. So, this is when he says, Nibirius Claiborne's life isn't worth risking your own. And in italics it says, no, so I'd better find something that is worth it. What does that mean? Why does she want to find something that's worth risking her life for? What is that? Why do you want to die, girl? What's going on? I don't get it. Anyway, so, yeah, she goes and makes this deal. Again, Yala does not say to destroy the heart, and Shera has to clarify that. And then we go to her working on setting the scene for the ship. And she has to be underwater, under the hull of the ship, breathing through a enchanted reed for 11 hours with goggles that give her perfect underwater vision. And we get to see what an elder is for the first time. Now, I, of course, because I am a person, and elders are usually people, assumed that the elders in this book were either people or predecessors to human beings in some way. It turns out that the only people-ish thing about the elder that she's looking at is its arms, which I don't know why that makes it so much creepier. But here's the description. Its scaled head bore a mouthful of shark's teeth, and it had 3 jet black eyes in a row on either side of its face. Gills flapped on its neck, and its arms, huge, muscular, humanoid arms, were bound up in chains tied to the underside of the ship. Evidently, this thing could bite her in half, no problem. And so she has to be on her guard in order to make sure she doesn't just die underwater here before she even starts her mission. And she has to stay that way for 11 hours, which just literally kill me. Especially considering that she can't really, like, fall asleep under there. That sucks for her. So eventually, she comes up out of the water very slowly. And it says it almost took a full hour to pull her entire body out of the water. But as soon as she did so, she moved quickly. Shera clipped her goggles and breathing reed to her belt, pulling a pair of hooks out and digging them into the wood of the hull. So she climbs up this hull this way and manages to sort of hover on the edge of the railing of the ship, listening for the fucking gladiator man, the champion, to walk by. And she knows that in a hand-to-hand fight, there is no fucking way. So in order to take him down, she has to poison him with 2 needles and keep a hand over his mouth so he can't yell. And she keeps his arms pinned to his sides with her legs so that he can't reach his weapons before the poison begins to kick in. I can't remember if the needles, yeah, they're paralysis needles. She doesn't even kill him. A double dose would likely be lethal even for a man of Urzaya's size. He would lose muscle control before his heart and lungs seized up. Most people would die in seconds, but champions were given resistance to poison as one of their many gifts. So, that's a whole other, level, which is interesting. That's one of his gifts. So yeah, he goes down. She goes into this cabin that she is almost positive has the guy in that she is intending to kill. And there are 2 people in the bed, which she didn't expect. And this dude apparently has a bodyguard who's always wrapped in all these bandages and who doesn't speak. And so for a second she's like, is that who's in bed with him? And when she inches forward, she realizes that the hair color is wrong. The guy who is in the bed is Tristania. And what's the guy's name? I'm trying to find it. Calder. The captain. That's right. I think captain. Is that his title? So, yeah, Tristania preferred to cover her body in bandages at all times to hide disfiguring injuries, but it seemed she took them off to sleep. So, Tristania, apparently, in the file, it was said to not have any special powers. But unfortunately, Shera, in making a quick departure from this cabin, she makes a noise and wakes Tristania up. And she tries to use a needle to defend herself. An earring in Jireen's left ear. Oh no, it's not Tristania. This is Jireen. Okay, she thought it was Tristania. And then she realizes that it's called her Martin, and so it's his wife, Jireen. That's what I'm getting this mixed up. So, Jireen's earring flashes and the needle bursts into green flame in midair, which is kind of rad. It's basically like she's got a low-level, shield around her from her earring. It was made of metal and should have at least melted, but not even ash drifted away. Soulbound, Shera thought. Of Jireen, the file had only said, no combat training, no special powers. When the woman summoned a ball of acid green flame into her palm, Shera swore revenge on that file. So, that is the end of the chapter. Tristania is the witness, the target's partner. Thank you. Yes. Sorry, George. I got that very late. I keep coming back to how I feel like this book is a murder mystery. So many questions. Who murdered the Emperor? What is all this stuff? I read these before Cradle, and this series is so different from his first series and Cradle as well. It's just interesting how Will makes such different universes. Yeah, and that's part of why I tend to be more patient with the slow release of information about this stuff, because I'm into the mystery up to a point, but yeah, I do want more of the world building to be made obvious. I'm fine with not knowing who killed the Emperor right away, things like that, but tell me what the hell a soulbound is by now. Let me know, I don't know, maybe by the time I get to the way he reveals what things are, I'll feel like it was worth it to not get that information right away. Who knows? I reserve the right to take back everything I said, as usual. Alright, I really have to wrap, but thank you again very much to George for commissioning this episode. I appreciate you. I hope that y'all are enjoying the coverage of it. And I will be seeing you again next Tuesday with a new episode. So until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
is an Unspoiled Network podcast.